Good afternoon. We're bringing today's hearing for Education and Economic Development to order. We will be beginning with the Maryland Higher Education Commission, otherwise known as MHAC, and we'll have an analysis from Sarah Baker.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to start with online course enrollment on page 6. Exhibit 1 shows the in and out state enrollments at Maryland institutions. And as you see, enrollment significantly increased in 2020, reflecting the impact of institutions teaching most courses remotely. Since then, enrollment has fallen 45%, but still exceeds pre-pandemic levels. Turning to Exhibit 2 on page 7 shows the top 5 Maryland institutions with the highest online enrollment, and these institutions account for 78% of the enrollments in fall 23. Overall, Global Campus is the only one to see increase in their enrollment. Exhibit 3 on page 8 shows the number of students from Maryland enrolled in other states, which increased in fall 23 after falling 25% from its peak in 2020. Turning to student loan debt tax credit program, at the bottom of the page, it starts a summary of the page. And just to note, the BRFA does include provision that would reduce the amount of tax credits that MHEP can improve from $18 million to $9 million in 25 tax year. Since $9 million is reserved for the authorization of tax credit for state employee, it is likely that only state employees would receive the tax credit in 25. As shown on Exhibit 4 on page 10, for the 24 tax year, the number of applications increased almost 20%. Exhibit 5 on page 11 shows that 85% of the applicants were eligible for the tax credit, and of those, a majority of those eligible applicants, about 84%, did not graduate from a Maryland institution. Exhibit 6 on page 12 shows the outstanding loan balances of the recipients, and almost 20% of the recipients had balances exceeding $100,000. Turning to the budget, in Exhibit 7 on page 14, this shows the spending for 26. Funding for Salinger accounts for 61% of the spending. The Nurse Support Program 2 accounts for 16%, and Education Grants and Administration each comprise 11% of the spending. As shown on Exhibit 8 on page 15, funding decreases 11.1%, or $14.9 million in 26. Now this includes removal of $18.8 million related to the one-time funding for the Higher Education Security Enhancement Grants and the removal of a legislative ad for the EMS and firefighter scholarship programs. These decreases were offset by $5 million for the Next Generation Scholarship Wraparound Services Grants, which will provide funding to nonprofits to assist high schoolers prepare for college. And this program was transferred from MSDE by statute. Turning to the Salinger formula, Exhibit 9 on page 17. If you recall, last year changes were made on how the formula was calculated. In that the per FTE's funding at the selected public institutions be based on 2-year prior expenditures. The percentage of the state FTE's funding was increased to 16.1%, and the allocations of funds is based on undergraduate FTEs at the independent institutions. And this resulted in a 47% decrease in funding in 25. Funding in 26 increases 1%, or $73.3 million. Now, due to the state's current budget situation, DLS recommends reducing funding for Salinger formula by 15%, or $36.7 million, and to restrict the remaining funds for a grant program that would be administered by MHEC, in which the MICUA institutions could apply for grants, which would be awarded based on the financial need of the institutions. In addition, DLS also recommends amending the statute to permanently eliminate the Salinger formula and replace it with a grant program. The first issue, the status of revising the program approval process as set out in statute, starts on page 20. As listed on the page, MHEC has completed 3 actions and is currently working on 4 others, including identifying the state workforce needs and emerging workforce programs. MHEC worked with Department of Labor and Commerce to develop the initial draft list. Now, emerging workforce need programs as defined in statute are graduate level programs that no institution offers, addresses a job or industry that is innovative, unique, and rare, and could leverage federal, state, or private resources. However, MHEC's draft list of emerging workforce needs includes such occupations as ship engineers, actors, art directors, and sales managers. From that list, MHEC developed a draft list of graduate programs to meet the needs that include historians, teachers, and political scientists. Now, MHEC circulated the draft list to the higher education segments for comments and suggestions on methodology. However, statute states that identifying state and regional workforce needs and emerging workforce need programs, MHEC shall consult with each segment of higher education. Next, as summarized on page 1, MHEC is working on developing standards of unreasonable and unnecessary duplication and has proposed that the content of the letters for intent for new graduate programs include information such as draft program details, mission, need duplication, and intended population. And MHEC expects to receive the first round of letters this summer. Moving on to reviewing mission statements. Since under statute, the next cycle would occur after the release of the 26th State Plan for Higher Education, MHEC deemed it would not be appropriate to delay the review until then, since the last review occurred in 2018, and has decided to conduct an abbreviated review this year. However, I would note MHEC did not conduct a review of mission statements as required by statute in 22. At the bottom of the page are 2 items to be completed, which includes establishing a review process for fully online programs and conducting a harm analysis by January 1st of this year, in which MHEC is to review each academic program that was recently approved and those approved in the 4 preceding school years that were subject to an objection from an HBCU to determine if the institution, state, or student suffer harm. We ask the Secretary to comment on the status of this report. Some language in the fiscal 25 budget restricted funds until MHEC submitted a 3rd status report on implementing various actions in statute. On page 22 is a summary of the report in which I just covered 3 of the items. MHEC was also to provide a status on submitting a report on reviewing administrative procedures, timelines, and deadlines to General Assembly, which they did in December 1st last year. So DLS has determined the report is in compliance with budget language and recommends that the $100,000 withheld in general funds be released. And if there are no objections, then a letter will be processed to authorize the release of funds. The last issue is Johns Hopkins University's financial aid related settlement, in which they settled a federal antitrust lawsuit for $18.5 million last month. The lawsuit was filed in 2020 and accused 17 highly selective institutions of illegally colluding to fix financial aid formulas and overcharging students. The institutions in the lawsuit were all members of the 568 Presidents Group, which is the name of the carve-out in the section of the Improving America's Schools Act of '94. And this allowed institutions to discuss financial aid formulas with immunity from antitrust laws due to their need-blind status. The plaintiffs argued the institutions did consider financial circumstances and made decisions based on family wealth and donation history, and admitted students on a special interest list who had substandard transcripts compared to the rest of the accepted class. Of the 17 defendants, 5 have not settled. The recommendations are on page 24. The first to reduce the funding from Selinger formula by 50% and restricts the remaining $36.7 million to be used to provide grants to MICUA institutions based on financial aid. And the BRFA recommendation is to amend the statute to eliminate the Selinger formula and establish a grant program. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you so much, Ms. Baker, for your analysis. Are there any questions for her today? Seeing none, we welcome Secretary Rye and your team. Please feel free to do a round of introductions before you begin.
Good afternoon, Chair Smith and Vice Chair Harris and committee member. I'm Dr. Sanjay Rai. I have the honor of serving as Secretary of Higher Education for the state of Maryland. I have with me Assistant Secretary Dr. Dow, Academic Affairs, and Mr. Jeff Newman, Assistant Secretary for Finance and Administration, and also Mr. Al Dorset. Can you come forward, Al? Director of our Office of Student Financial Aid. Chair Smith, it is always a pleasure and to have the opportunity to come before you and the committee and speak in depth about Maryland Higher Education Commission's efforts and certainly the budget, the topic for today. As stated during an earlier hearing, we look forward to continuing the great work to strengthen Maryland's outstanding colleges and universities. I heard you loud and clear during the higher education budget overview briefing regarding the subcommittee's full name that also includes economic development. And my remarks will address this aspect of the importance of higher education funding. Before I begin, let me get into that directly. As you know, the state of Maryland is under budget constraint. We realize that adjustments will have to be made to meet the Moore-Miller administration's goal to grow our economy, apply a fiscally responsible strategy, and invest in our core priorities. Still, the proposed FY 2026 budget invests significantly in higher education, providing funding to continue the transformative work across Maryland. The budget allows the system of post-secondary education to fulfill its mission of helping to meet the talent needs of our state by addressing key areas such as the workforce shortage and technological changes while contributing to a thriving economy. The budget, let me share some of the highlights of our budget. MHAC and the other areas of higher education will receive over $858 million in funding, representing a 2.3% increase in funding. Maryland Higher Education Commission receives over $13 million in total funds for general administration of the agency. This will help MHAC to oversee higher education, continue to advance the Moore-Miller State Plan priorities, particularly Priority 2, education, and Priority 4, jobs, execute important initiatives like developing and implementing the post-2025 goals for higher education, developing a new state plan for post-secondary education, continuing to make improvements in state financial aid programs, and other important higher education initiatives. MHAC has recently added two very important senior positions. The first is Deputy Secretary. This position is responsible for working to meet the priorities of the Moore-Miller State Plan, developing and implementing the post-2025 goals for higher education, and rewriting the Maryland State Plan for post-secondary education, in addition to other important initiatives at our agency. The second position is the Chief of Staff. This position will be responsible for managing and administering all grants at MHAC, along with supporting the Secretary, Deputy Secretary, and senior leadership of MHAC with priorities and initiatives. This is not a new position. This year's budget provides MHAC with two additional positions. One is an Assistant Attorney General who will help to address the workload of our Assistant Attorney's Office. MHAC has also received a new position to assist in administering the Next Generation Scholars Program, which you know is being transferred from MSD to MHAC. The governor has allocated a record-breaking $138 million in state funding to the Howard P. Rawlings Educational Excellence Award Program, which supports students with the greatest level of financial need. This is an increase over 21% in funding over the last year's budget. The Office of Student Financial Assistance is in the process of procuring and implementing a new modern financial aid management system to replace the now obsolete MDCAP system. The new system will be accessible on all mobile devices and provide streamlined access to information pertaining to state financial aid program. The MHAC budget also contains $73.3 million for Joseph A. Sillinger program, which provides unrestricted state funds to independent and nonprofit institutions of higher education. We consider these institutions as an important part of higher education fabric of the state of Maryland. The budget is a testament to the Moore-Miller administration's commitment to providing equitable access to high-quality post-secondary opportunities. Maryland has long recognized that an educated workforce is critical to economic growth, social mobility, and civic engagement. The MHAC has established strategic goals to increase post-secondary access, affordability, and success, ensuring that Maryland residents are prepared for the demands of the 21st century economy. Today, I want to highlight the importance of these goals and the actions we must take to achieve them utilizing Maryland's investment in MHAC. Maryland has made significant progress in expanding access to higher education, particularly through need-based financial aid programs like the Guaranteed Access Grant and the Community College Promise Scholarship. Community College Promise scholarships have $15 billion budget that governor has fully funded. However, financial barriers remain a significant hurdle for many students, particularly those from low-income and first-generation college-attending families. We must continue to invest in state aid programs and streamline the financial aid process to ensure that no student is denied an education due to financial constraints. Access alone is not enough. We must ensure that students who enter higher education complete their degrees in a timely manner. Data shows that Maryland's public four-year institutions have a 6-year graduation rate of over 70%, one of the highest in the nation. However, disparities persist among students from underrepresented backgrounds, strengthening academic advising, expanding dual enrollment opportunities, and enhancing transfer pathways between community colleges and universities will help more students earn their degrees efficiently. Maryland's economy is rapidly evolving with growing demand for skilled workers in healthcare, cybersecurity, advanced manufacturing, and education. To maintain our state's competitiveness, we must strengthen partnership between higher education institutions and employers, expand apprenticeship and internship programs, and invest in workforce training initiatives. We must ensure a strong alignment with post-secondary education across all sectors driving Maryland's economy. A growing share of Maryland's workforce consists of adult learners who need upskilling or credentialing to remain competitive. Expanding flexible learning options, such as online degree program and competency-based education, will allow more Marylanders to gain the skills they need to thrive in the workforce. MHAC is expanding by addressing the need for new innovative academic programs and leveraging state financial aid resources to assist those who need funding for career and technical training. Promise Scholarship Program is a prime example of that. I urge this body to continue prioritizing investment in post-secondary education and to support policies that remove barriers to students. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer your questions.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Are you going to provide some additional testimony, sir?
Yes,
Okay,
we
thank
have responses to the issues and recommended actions. Emily, do you want to do the harm analysis?
Sure. Thank you. In response to page 21, the Secretary should comment on the status of the harm analysis. I'm happy to provide a report on that. We are in the early stages of drafting this report, which is due September 1st. This initial report will define harm in 3 ways: harm to our historically Black colleges and universities, harm to the state, or harm to the student. Metrics will likely include enrollment trends, particularly disproportionate drops or increases in enrollment, market share, for example, a redistribution of students from an HBCU to a non-HBCU, shifts in funding allocations, program viability and sustainability, so things like faculty and accreditation, graduation and completion rates, and the economic impact of a specific program. We expect to meet with representatives from the 4 HBCUs in Maryland to develop this report, and this would include senior leadership, faculty, and students. We look forward to presenting that report to you by the end of the summer. Happy to answer questions.
And the next issue was determining the report to be in compliance and releasing the $100,000 in withheld funds, and MHEC concurs with that recommended action. And then the other recommended action is to reduce the Sellinger formula and turn it into a grant program, and the Maryland Higher Education respectfully opposes the recommended action and requests that the General Assembly fund the Sellinger program at the level of the governor's allowance in fiscal 2026. The funding in the Sellinger program, like that in the John A. Cade program that we talked about last week, is linked to the per-student funding provided by the Maryland Public Four-Year Colleges and Universities. The administration of the program on a per-FTE student basis makes the most sense for the allocations of funds to the independent nonprofit colleges and universities. The model ensures some consistency for all segments and also for institutions and their ability to accurately budget from year to year. The administration of the grant program as proposed with no additional resources is based on the financial need of the institution, which MHEC does not currently have the resources or expertise to evaluate at this time. The analysis would be extensive and burdensome. It also raises a lot of questions on what will financially need be based, how will the grant be administered, will colleges and universities have to apply, which I think it's self-evident that they would, but what will be the remedy for institutions who believe that they are financially needy but are denied funding in any given year? Keeping the allocation of Sellinger funds through a per FTE calculation for each independent nonprofit institution is an objective way in decision-making that providing the funding through a competitive grant program based on financial need would not entail and remains the most equitable way to distribute the Sellinger funding. We discussed at the Aid to Community Colleges the comprehensive study of the CADE formula that was conducted by DLS. Ultimately, in that study, they identified 6 key considerations to weigh for future challenges for the CADE formula funding, none of which were the financial need of the institution. The concluding consideration of the DLS analysis was to build around metrics that are easy to collect, access, and analyze. Unfortunately, the relative financial needs of an independent institution are not easily ascertained. MHEC would encounter challenges collecting, assessing, and analyzing an institution's financial need. Sellinger funding is provided as an unrestricted grant to the colleges and universities, and the institutions can use these funds to pay for their operations annually. But as seen in Exhibit 1 in our testimony, the main use of the funds over the year has been to provide Maryland students with student financial assistance. Over the past years between fiscal 2020 and fiscal 2024, the institutions have provided almost 89% of Sellinger funding to student financial assistance. This commitment to provide student financial aid has provided a wider choice to Maryland students in making their decisions on where they want to pursue their higher education goals. The tie in the Sellinger program to the four-year public segment has also provided a strong relationship of the independent nonprofit segment with the other segments of higher education. And this unique allocation in state funding for higher education leads to greater cohesiveness and collaboration among the whole higher education community in Maryland. So for these reasons, MHEC respectfully requests that the General Assembly reject this recommendation and fund the Sellinger program at the level of the governor's allowance in fiscal 2026. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Is that everyone? I think it's everything that I have here. Are there any questions for the panel? Delegate Grice.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You have one or working with the AG, and with this position or positions, I didn't catch how many. What will their charge be? What is their responsibility going to be?
Let me give you the details that I skipped during my. So their charge will be advise the Office of Student Financial Aid Assistance, including drafting OSFA regulations where warranted, draft and review data sharing agreements, grant agreements, and contracts, advise the graduate nurse faculty scholarship, advise MHAC on Maryland Public Information Act request, assist the principal council in drafting legislations where warranted, sit on a number of advisory boards, including the Financial Assistant Advisory Council. Our AG currently is busy with a number of the bills that have been passed, and House Bill 1244 on academic program approval process itself has tremendous work for the agency and also for the General Counsel.
Any other additional questions? Well, thank you for the report that you gave us the update on. And as we can see, there are some deep concerns about the proposal to reduce Salinger and your capacity to administer the grant. So I just want you to know that was point taken. Don't take our silence as a lack of interest or attention to what you've shared with us today. That concludes the MHEC panel, but there are some witnesses that will be providing in-person testimony today. The only favorable testimony I have is from Maria Tilden from Johns Hopkins.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Wonderful to see you.
Good morning. I think that there was an error in our position on the proposal, but good morning.
My apologies. I was just reading what was here. Erase that. You state your position.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the subcommittee. For the record, I'm Maria Tilden. I'm the Vice President for Government, Community, and Economic Partnerships at Johns Hopkins University in Medicine. As you're experiencing, I know firsthand, we at Hopkins are in the throes of a period of great uncertainty. Higher education institutions across the state, including Johns Hopkins, are struggling to navigate the extraordinary impacts of recent changes in federal policies on our mission and on our campuses, including our students. For decades, Salinger funds have made a Hopkins education affordable, allowing us to offer more competitive aid packages than often are the difference between students remaining in Maryland or taking their talents elsewhere. We are delighted to share that this year, 335 undergraduates at Johns Hopkins from Maryland received Salinger scholarships, of which 32% are first-generation scholars, 45% are Pell Grant eligible, with 19 counties represented across the state. And as we look ahead to next year, I cannot emphasize enough that every dollar counts for Hopkins and for these students. As the largest private employer in Baltimore City and the state, we have a tremendous impact on employment and new business formation, largely driven by the research dollars that we draw into Maryland's business and innovation ecosystem. But recent federal actions present a tremendous challenge for us. The executive order pausing the USAID funding is a significant blow to us, involving thousands of jobs locally and around the world. And the announcement last Friday of a dramatic NIH funding will result in major reductions in life-saving biomedical research at Hopkins and other Maryland research universities. This week, we joined a lawsuit against the NIH cut because it would mean a loss of $280 million in federal funding and do irreparable harm to our research program, our patients and their families, and to our faculty, staff, and students. In this tumult, it is essential that we keep Maryland's best and brightest students here by offering them the aid they need and deserve wherever they choose to go to college. The financial support that Salinger program provides is essential to that goal. A dramatic reduction to this critical funding would be real and substantial harm to both Maryland students and Maryland's economy at precisely the time when research universities are facing potentially severe federal cuts, hindering our ability to deliver on our mission. That is why we respectfully ask that you reject the proposed Salinger cuts to ensure that independent Maryland colleges and universities are eligible. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Are there any questions for Ms. Tilden? Well, thank you for sharing just really a sliver of what we know Johns Hopkins has been doing and will continue to be doing for not only our nation, but right here in Maryland. So thank you for your testimony. Greatly appreciate it.
Thank you.
At this time, I will call up the remaining panelists that have signed up. Matt Power, President Siam, Dem Leitner, and Spence.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good to see you as well. Chair Smith, Vice Chair Harris, members of the subcommittee, thank you for the opportunity to testify today. I'm Matt Power, President of MICUA. This year, I fear it might seem slightly disingenuous to thank Ms. Baker for her budget analysis, but I fully appreciate the incredibly hard job she has in developing tough budget recommendations for your consideration. She is a consummate professional that I greatly respect, even when I might not like the DLS recommendations. I sit here today representing Maryland's independent colleges at what we truly see as a crossroads in the nearly 50-year-long partnership between our institutions and the state of Maryland. Our institutions work with our 2-year and 4-year public institutions across the state. As an association, we work with the other segments of higher education, MHEC, the administration, and all of you year-round, helping to develop policies and legislation that benefit students, employers, and communities in Maryland to further the policies and goals of the executive and legislative branches. Before the state was in the financial position that it is now, we were the first in line on the chopping block for a 50% reduction last year. And we sit here now with another 50% reduction recommendation. We know the state is facing challenges, and we've always been willing to do our fair share as part of that effort. That is in large part because of the wisdom of the many legendary legislators that occupy the chairs that I know all of you are honored to be in at this moment. They realize that when private institutions close, there are personal costs to students' lives and their families, and public costs to the city and the state that have to fill the void. Your predecessors watched that happen when the University of Baltimore, a private institution at the time, shuttered its doors. It was left to the state and the city of Baltimore to pick up the pieces. After that experience, in an action familiar to many of you, they created a commission to prevent future closures. What they concluded was that a small revenue stream to keep private institutions thriving was a cheaper alternative to revitalizing the blight left from a failed institution. That created the Salinger formula, and it has stood the test of time envisioned by so many that came before us. We recognize that the DLS recommendation is simply that, a recommendation, but we're also coming off the heels of being the only segment to suffer a 50% reduction last year. Were this reduction to be taken, our sector, the one with the smallest slice of the pie by orders of magnitude, will suffer a 73% reduction over the last 2 years, while cumulatively over the same time period, all the others have grown. At that point, it would seem naive to believe that we had anything that resembled a partnership with the state of Maryland. We recognize that no one is going to be spared this year, and we offer to try and do our fair share. But a 50% reduction for the second year in a row seems as if the state is truly rooting for our demise. We implore you to reject the DLS recommendation and to recognize the commitment that our institutions have made for centuries to the betterment of Marylanders, legislators, and the communities that our campuses are an integral part of. I'd ask you to listen closely to our presidents to hear about the experiences taking place across their campuses. And with that, I'll hand it off to President Dean Leitner from St. John's College.
Thank you. Chair Smith, Vice Chair Harris, I'm Nora Dean Leitner, the president of Maryland's oldest college, St. John's. I very much appreciate the opportunity to testify before you today at what I believe is a watershed moment in American higher education. Outside of the issues that we face here in the state of Maryland, higher education is under assault nationally. The uncertainty and fear created in Washington, D.C. is felt on all of our campuses, and most importantly, I see it in the faces of our students. They don't know if they receive Pell Grants and federal student loans to continue their education at our college. Our gender diverse and LGBTQ students are living in fear and scared about their ability to continue their education. As the president of the oldest institution of higher education in Maryland, and one who has worked in many different states, I can tell you that Maryland's higher education system is envied throughout the country for its caliber and the collaboration between the independent colleges and with our public 4-year and private and 2-year institutions. The formulas the General Assembly put in place are the underlying reasons for that success. Yet, The notion of a small funding stream to support a diversity of choices in Maryland and for Maryland high schoolers seems to have come under attack in the state. 42 states fund their private colleges and universities, and currently Maryland ranks in the top quarter at number 11, behind other highly educated East Coast states, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Virginia, New Jersey. If the DLS recommendation is taken, Maryland will rank 21st behind southern states like Tennessee, Georgia, and Alabama, essentially assuring the loss of more Maryland high schoolers to other states. Small independent colleges are fragile. One per week closed in the first half of 2024. College closures, as we've heard, have an outsized impact on communities. It isn't hyperbolic to say that without a healthy partnership with the state, many of us fear for our long-term and some for their short-term future. Now, St. John's own history throughout the 19th century tells the tale. We flourished with state support and educated the leaders of the state and the nation. We contracted, which is really a synonym for layoffs and tiny student numbers, whenever the state withdrew its support. The state's partnership with its independent colleges has been so strong for so long, but the proposed back-to-back annual reductions of 50% are financially debilitating. They also undermine the trust on which we have built, and they undermine the incredibly diverse higher education environment in the state. I'm your neighbor here in Annapolis. We have been your partner, literally, for centuries. And we take this partnership seriously and collaborate on everything from degree attainment goals to the state plan for higher education and the creation of higher education policy with this body. We're also accountable through our ongoing reporting to the state to help ensure that we provide a quality education and experience for our students in our special distinctive Great Books program. We're active and engaged partners with the state of Maryland in all ways, and we make Annapolis a truly distinctive state capital through our offerings and activities. And we provide an incredible return on investment for the funding provided to our 13 institutions. We're not seeking increases. We're simply asking that you not return us to the funding levels of 2006 and instead hold us to the funding levels provided in fiscal 2020, right before the pandemic. It is a small ask for an outsized return and an investment in our collective future. Please don't take your institutions, our contributions, and our students for granted. And please don't make me go back to my campus and tell our students that Maryland is no longer a reliable partner. Thank you for your time, your attention, and your commitment to Maryland's next generation.
Thank you for your testimony and for your leadership. We appreciate having you here today.
Good afternoon, Chair Smith, Vice Chair Harris, and members of the subcommittee. My name is Dr. Mary Lou Yam. I'm president of Notre Dame of Maryland University in Baltimore. On behalf of Notre Dame, I want to express my gratitude for your continued support of independent higher education in the state of Maryland. The General Assembly's past funding of the Selinger program has significantly contributed to Notre Dame and the other independent colleges and universities' mission to increase access, choice, and opportunity for Maryland students. As you may know, Notre Dame is a private Catholic university established in 1895 in Baltimore City with the mission to build inclusive communities and educate leaders to transform the world. Notre Dame is a comprehensive university that enrolls approximately 1,800 students and employs over 450 people. Our School of Education at Notre Dame is the largest private provider and the top 5 overall provider of new teacher certifications in the state. Without the support of the independent sector, it would be impossible for the state of Maryland to meet its goals in the Blueprint Plan. Notre Dame serves a very diverse population of students. At the traditional undergraduate college, 81% of our students are Maryland residents. 58% are individuals of color. Over a third of our students are first generation, and half are Pell-eligible students, 50%. The Selinger program provides Notre Dame with essential funding to support Maryland students with scholarships and need-based grants. In 2025, Notre Dame has provided over $12 million in institutional aid grants to students which included $1.7 million in Sellinger financial aid grants. Last year, the 47% reduction to the Sellinger formula resulted in a $1.3 million or 40% reduction to Notre Dame. Notre Dame took the third largest percentage reduction given our high number of graduate students. In order to hold our students harmless, Notre Dame had to enact painful position reductions and non-wage reductions to backfill for the Sellinger aid funds and make our students whole. Respectfully, I am very concerned about the DLS's recommendation to eliminate the Sellinger program in the FY26 budget. Not only would it eliminate the nearly 50-year partnership between the state and the private colleges and universities, but respectfully, it's based on a flawed model. The elegance of the formula is that institutions with growing enrollments are able to continue to grow, and institutions with a decline in enrollment year over year still have a lifeline to bounce back from a bad year or two. Moreover, rather than encouraging collaboration among institutions, the model would annually pit us against one another, and virtually we would have no predictability to do our budget planning. But my greatest concern is that it is practically infeasible for any entity to accurately gauge the relative health of one institution versus another. To fully gauge the health of an institution requires dozens of metrics, as we know. It simply isn't reasonable to ask our Higher Ed Commission to become a bond rating agency or a real estate appraiser, an actuary, auditor, and a forensic accountant all in one. In conclusion, I respectfully urge you to reject the DLS recommendation and fully fund the Sellinger program in alignment with Governor Moore's allowance. As a result of the Sellinger program, Marylanders have greater access, choice, and the opportunity to enroll in a college in Maryland in pursuit of their academic and career goals. Thank you for your attention and time.
Thank you so much, President Yam, for your leadership and your advocacy here today. It's deeply appreciated. President Smith.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Smith and Vice Chair Harris and members of this committee. I'm Weymouth Spence, President of Washington Adventist University, located in Tacoma Park, Maryland, Montgomery County. I'm the current chair of the McHugh Board of Trustees, guiding both the association and my institution through some of the most troubled waters that we have seen in decades. Washington Adventist University is the top-ranked institution of the state of Maryland for economic mobility, in large part because of the Sellinger program allows us to provide financial aid to students and often wouldn't go to college otherwise. We have more than 50 collaborations and affiliations with other institutions in our area, and we are a core part of the fabric and that creates Tacoma Park. This year, McHugh members utilized 85% of our Sellinger funding to provide financial aid to over 4,500 Maryland students. I'll repeat, over 4,500 of our constituents received financial aid through the Sellinger program this year. After last year's dramatic reduction to the program, each of our institutions made sacrifices to continue to provide financial aid to our students. But I can say with certainty that if the program receives another 50% reduction, that simply isn't possible for most of us, and we will be forced to withdraw financial aid from our constituents at the same time that they are in fear of their federal grants and loans. The Sellinger program not only allows us to provide financial aid to students, but over the last 2 decades, it has allowed us to provide the opportunity for a private education on a small campus to students that previously denied the opportunity. A result of our previous partnership and support, the undergraduate student bodies of McHugh campuses are 50% minority and 25% Pell eligible. I don't understand why we would turn our back on these students at the most perilous time in higher education. Despite what you have heard from my colleagues, We sit here as willing and able partners that want to collaborate with you and build on our history of partnership. The days since we received the DLS analysis have been some of the longest and hardest for me, not only during my time as chair of the McHugh Board of Trustees, but my entire 17 years as president of Washington Adventist University. The elimination of the formula and our connection to our 2-year and 4-year counterparts will permanently and irreparably scar the higher education landscape in Maryland. My colleagues and I are firmly united in that belief. Our primary goal, not only and request for this body, is to support the governor's budget and reject the DLS recommendation. That is my request of you. As chair of the McHugh Board of Trustees, I also had to accept the reality that in fiscal times like Maryland is currently experiencing that might not be practically or politically feasible. This led to some incredible, painful discussions within our long-standing membership. While our request is that you reject the DLS recommendation, if you are unable to do so, the McHugh Board of Trustees voted to endorse an alternative recommendation that would preserve your history of partnership with the Maryland private colleges, the integrity of the formula, and the collaboration between all segments of higher education. We hope that you will only adopt it if absolutely necessary. The last page of the McHugh's testimony includes language for inclusion in the BERFA that would only allow participation in the Salinger program for McHugh institutions with undergraduate enrollment under 5,000 FTEs. This alternative recommendation would very unfortunately prevent one of our most prestigious institutions from participating in the Salinger program, and it was a decision that weighed extremely heavily on every board member within McHugh. While it does not generate the $36 million included in the DLS recommendation, it would result in $20.5 million to help you resolve Maryland's fiscal 26 deficit. I will simply emphasize one last time that we offer this reluctantly and only as an alternative to the DLS recommendation and in one last attempt to demonstrate our good faith in partnership. Thank you very much.
President Spence, thank you so much for your testimony, but also for your leadership, not only on your respective campus, but also in McHugh. And I want to say to all assembled and those that support you that are not here today, that Maryland does see value in partnership in our independent colleges and universities. We see the fruits of your students all around us. They work here, they educate our children, they treat us when we are getting aid at hospitals and in other healthcare settings. And so it is unfortunate that you have the feeling that this recommendation signals a lack of commitment to your institutions. I can say that without reservation, I believe I speak for all assembled, that we know that your students and your staff members are Marylanders who are not only giving to us every day, you're making our state and our nation stronger. So we do not want you to leave today feeling unsupported or disregarded. And I know that in a time that's very challenging, where a lot of people are being asked to take cuts and to consider, eliminating things that are very important, it speaks to your character and your commitment to your respective campuses that you came here not just to bemoan something that you found very challenging, but also with some potential solutions. So I want to say thank you for your sacrifices. Thank you for your leadership. And are there any questions from others today? Delegate Grice.
Questions, and I just want to echo what the chair was saying too, and I know that a lot of your institutions are really the anchors in some of our smallest towns across the state as well, and that would be very devastating if you guys were ceased to exist, and I don't, obviously that's not going to happen. We're going to make sure that doesn't happen. So my first question is, last year with the cuts that were taken, it primarily affected Johns Hopkins, mainly because they had more graduate students than the other institutions did. And you guys were more able to absorb those cuts, mainly because their endowment fund was so robust. So basically what they did is they just drew that down in order to be able to backfill that money. But if we were to take this year, the cut this year, it would actually have a far more reaching impact on all of the other institutions, correct?
Yes, I think that's a very fair statement. If the DLS recommendation was taken, we really don't know what it would mean. It would mean that MHEC would have to come up with some sort of basis on which they determine the relative financial need of one institution versus the next. That could mean one institution gets all the money. It could mean 3 of them get funded. It could mean we just simply have no idea what the allocation would look like under a grant-based program.
And then, well, based on that, Chair, that's my second question. If it's a grant-based program, and if it's on the capital side, that would be much easier for you guys to manage that. And it'd probably be easier for the state to manage that too, because you're talking about comparing different projects and be able to plan that through time. But we're talking about the operating budget here. And your operating budget's the same every year. You have all of your fixed expenses. So a grant program really wouldn't make a whole lot of sense to do that in an operating budget, is that?
We would concur.
Concur.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you to the panel. That would conclude the budget hearing for MHAC. We'll now move to MHAC Student Financial Assistance next. And I believe Micah Richards will provide the analysis.
Good afternoon. Yes.
Micah Richards will now provide the budget analysis.
Okay. Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Micah Richards, and I want to thank the chair of the committee and the great state of Maryland for allowing me to speak before you today. The Office of Student Financial Assistance within the Maryland Higher Education Commission, referred to as MHEC, is responsible for the administration of the state financial assistance programs. This is their fiscal 26 budget analysis. The fiscal 26 budget increases by $6 million to around $224 million. Pages 2 through 4 is the summary of the document. Pages 5 through 9 list all of the student financial aid programs under this budget code. Pages 10 through 11, the free application for federal student aid, referred to as FAFSA. The FAFSA Simplification Act replaced the expected family contribution, referred to as EFC, criteria with the Student Aid Index, referred to as SAI, which caused delays and technical issues that hindered the applicant's submission process. Due to these issues, MHEC extended the deadline to apply for the 24-25 FAFSA award year from March 1st, 2024 to June 1st, 2024. The deadline to apply for the 25-26 FAFSA award year is March 1st, 2025. Page 12, Exhibit 2 shows the number of FAFSAs filed in Maryland that decreased by 3% in the 24-25 award year compared to the 23-24 award year. Page 13, Exhibit 3 compares Maryland's FAFSA completion rate as of June 2024 to the states that Maryland competes with for employees. Maryland had a completion rate of around 50%, which exceeded the national average of 46%. Maryland's rate decreased by around 8 percentage points compared to the 23-24 award year. Page 14, Exhibit 4 compares the FAFSA completion rate of local public school systems in Maryland as of June 2024. Howard County Public School System achieved the highest completion rate at 62%. Dorchester County had the lowest completion rate at 37%. The average completion rate across all public school systems is 50%. Page 15, the Guaranteed Access Grant, referred to as GA Awards, is under the Education Excellence Awards Program, referred to as EEA. GA grants, when combined with the federal Pell Grant, cover 100% of the need for the state's lowest income students. The change to SAI to determine financial need, as well as Chapter 634 of 2023, has resulted in more students being eligible for GA awards. Because of this, in Exhibit 5 on page 16, GA initial awards have increased by 69% and renewal awards have increased by 4% in fiscal 25 compared to fiscal 24. Page 17, Exhibit 6, 98% of GA grant recipients in fiscal '24 have a SAI of $3,850 or lower, with 87% having a $0 SAI. The educational assistance grants, referred to as EA awards, is under the EEA program. The EA grant is designed to meet 40% of the financial need at four-year institutions and 60% at community colleges for full-time undergraduate students from low to middle-income families. Page 18, Exhibit 5 shows currently in fiscal '25, the initial applicants have increased by a significant 146%, and the renewals have increased by 107% compared to fiscal '24. However, since statutory guidelines require all GA awards to be fulfilled before funds are allocated to EA awards, MHEC noted that they are currently awarding EA renewal applicants and not providing EA initial awards. Page 19. Exhibit 8 shows that 77% of the students receiving an EA award in fiscal '24 had an SAI of less than $3,850. The EA grant is based on student need after accounting for the federal Pell Grants. The average EA grant for individuals with a $0 SAI is less than the average of those with an SAI between $1 and $3,850 because students with a lower SAI receive a higher federal Pell Grant and often qualify for smaller EA grant awards. As of January 2025, MHEC has awarded around $128 million in EEA funds, of which $104 million is for GA initial and renewal awards, and $23 million is for EA renewal awards. Page 20, Exhibit 9 shows the recipients of state aid. The total number of recipients in fiscal '25 is expected to decrease by around 4%, and the projected average award increases by around 9% compared to fiscal '24. The fiscal '24 and '25 analysis documents did not provide the allowance year estimates. MHEC does have the fiscal '26 allowance estimates, and DLS requests for MHEC to present the information. Page 21, the Board of Public Works approved in their July 17, 2024 meeting a reduction of $20 million for EEA, a reduction of $1.1 million for the Maryland Loan Assistance Repayment Program, referred to as LARP, for police officers and probation agents, and a reduction of $1.1 million for the Maryland Police Officers and Probation Agents Scholarship. The fiscal '26 budget includes 5 proposed deficiencies for fiscal '25, totaling $8.7 million, including $15 million for EA and GA grants, $4 million for the Conroy and Cryer Memorial Scholarship, a reduction of $3 million for Hoffman LARP, reduction of $3.7 million for LARP for police officers and probation agents, and a reduction of $3.7 million for the police officers and probation agents scholarship. Page 22, Exhibit 10 shows the overview of the proposed budget. 72% of the fiscal '26 allowance supports need-based financial aid. Page 23, Exhibit 11 shows the budget change where the fiscal '26 allowance increasing by $6 million compared to fiscal '25 appropriation. EEA awards have the largest increase of around $9 million. Page 24, Chapter 100 of 2023 made the mandated funding for the police officers and probation agents scholarship and LARP for police officers and probation agents $5 million. Exhibit 12 shows the mandated appropriation was significantly underspent due to MHEC paying institutions less than $125,000 for the scholarship and less than $30,000 for the LARP in fiscal '23 and '24. MHEC should comment on what communication measures it has taken to connect with police officers and probation agents about pursuing these programs. Page 25, the Budget Reconciliation and Financing Act, referred to as BRFA of 2025, proposes to reduce the mandated funding level for the LARP for police officers and probation agents and the police officers and probation agents scholarship to $200,000. The fiscal 26 budget proposes to reduce the funding by $4.8 million for LARP and $4.5 million for the scholarship. Page 26 through 27, Need-Based Student Financial Assistance Fund receives unused scholarship funds at the close of each fiscal year. Exhibit 13 shows that since fiscal 22, MEC has experienced significant amounts of underspending of scholarship funds in certain programs compared to the level of the appropriation, which has led to significant transfers into and a higher than typical closing balance for the Need-Based Student Financial Assistance Fund. The closing balance for fiscal 24 was around $71 million, an increase of around $32 million compared to fiscal 23. Page 28, Chapter 101 of 2023 added $5 million for the Nancy Graysmith Teachers Scholars Award. There was only 2 eligible applicants that received $4,500. MHEC should discuss why the remaining funds were not reverted to the general fund as required. There is significant underspending for multiple scholarship programs. MHEC should comment on the potential for surveying the applicants on the scholarship process, including the financial aid portal, reasons for declining scholarships, and reasons for neither accepting nor declining awards. Page 29 through 30. Exhibit 14 shows the Community College Promise Scholarship Award data. MEC has consistently underspent their appropriation in the last 3 years, $8.9 million in fiscal 22, $10.8 million in fiscal 23, and around $7 million in fiscal 24. According to MEC, the cause of the underspending relates to high rates of cancellations of awards due to the applicant not having at least 6 credits in a semester of a credit-bearing program. The Department of Legislative Services recommends reducing $5 million in general funds in each fiscal 25 and 26 from the Community College Promise Scholarship due to the consistent underspending of the program. DLS also recommends adding a provision to the BRFA to reduce the mandated funding level for the program from $15 million to $10 million. Page 31. Exhibit 15 shows the Teaching Fellow Scholarship Award data. Despite increases in the total number of awards, the program did not receive enough eligible applicants to award the full amount of the appropriation in fiscal 23 and 24 as the appropriation increased. As a result, MHEC underspent by more than $4 million in each fiscal 23 and 24. DLS recommends reducing $4 million in special funds in each fiscal 25 and 26 for the Teaching Fellows for Maryland Scholarship due to the underspending of the appropriation in the last 2 years. Page 32, Exhibit 16, shows the 2+2 Transfer Scholarship Award data. In fiscal 23, 28% of awards were canceled. In the fiscal 24, 35% awards were canceled. Cancellations in the program typically are due to students being required to graduate with their associate degrees and transfer into a Maryland 4-year institution by the fall or spring semester after graduation, whichever comes first. Therefore, MHEC underspent 84% of the 2+2 transfer scholarship program in fiscal 23 and 24. MHEC should comment on their communication efforts to notify community college students of this scholarship program. Page 33, language in the fiscal 25 budget bill restricted $50,000 in general funds in MHEC pending submission of a report detailing the review of the Office of Student Financial Assistance website. MHEC provided information to DLS regarding the review of the website, but has not officially submitted the report. MHEC should comment on when the agency anticipates submitting the report. Through MHEC's collaboration with DOIT, the Department of Information Technology, it has been uncovered that only 120 pages out of the 600 plus pages on the website have been touched in the last 2 years. The Department of Information Technology stated that there is mostly static content on the website, and occasionally the editor will forget to publish a page which prevents the public from accessing it. MHEC and DoIT have noted the usability of the website is the major concern. Page 34, language in the fiscal 25 budget bill restricted $100,000 in general funds and MHEC pending submission of report on the impact of credit completion requirements on financial aid awards. Exhibit 17 shows EEA credit completion outcome. 35% of students completed at least 30 credits and are eligible to receive their full award. 24% completed in between 24 and 29 credits and are eligible for a prorated award. 40% completed fewer than 24 credits and became ineligible for the 24-25 academic year, and 1% had no credits reported. Page 35, Exhibit 18 details the comparison between the last 4 years of credit completion outcomes. In the 23-24 academic year, the share of students with at least 30 credits had a 1 percentage point increase compared to the 22-23 academic year. Students in between 24 and 29 credits and students with less than 24 credits each decreased by 1 percentage point in the 23-24 academic year compared to the 22-23 academic year. Page 36, Exhibit 19 shows the credit completion information by higher education segment in the EEA program for the 23-24 academic year. Due to having more students receiving awards, four-year public institutions have the highest number of students in each completion category. However, as a share of students, community colleges have the highest share, having 75% of students with less than 24 credits, while independent institutions had the lowest with 16% of students. DLS recommends releasing the $100,000 in general funds that were withheld pending submission of this report and will process a letter to the effect if no objections are raised in the hearing. Page 37, committee narrative in the 2024 Joint Chairman's Report, referred to as the JCR, requested that MHEC submit a report on the outcomes of students participating in the Next Generation Scholars Program. MHEC provided information to DLS to do this report, but has not officially submitted the report. MHEC should comment on when the agency anticipates submitting the report. Exhibit 20 provides details about the funding awarded to each nonprofit in the 23-24 award year. Page 38, Exhibit 21 shows the GA initial and renewal grant was awarded to a combined 238 applicants with a total amount of $3.8 million. The total amount of initial awards was $1.5 million and renewal awards was $2.3 million. Page 39 through 40, DLS recommends to add language to reduce the fiscal 25 appropriation by $5 million for the Maryland Community College Promise Scholarship Program. Add language to reduce the fiscal 25 appropriation by $4 million for the Teaching Fellows for Maryland's Scholarship Program. Adopt committee narrative requesting a report on the impact of the credit completion requirement on financial aid awards. Adopt committee narrative requesting report on the Next Generation Scholar students and their post-secondary outcomes. Reduce general funds within the Maryland Community College Promise Scholarship Program by $5 million due to lower projected expenditures. Reduce special funds within the Teaching Fellows for Maryland Scholarship Program by $4 million due to lower projected expenditures. Page 41, DLS BRFA recommendation is reduce the mandated funding level for Maryland Community College Promise Scholarship from $15 million to $10 million. Page 42, JCR responses was discussed earlier in this presentation for the status of the Office of Student Financial Assistance website in Issue 2, the impact of credit completion requirement on financial aid awards in Issue 3, and the Next Generation Scholars post-secondary outcomes in Issue 4. Page 43 through 47 shows the exhibits for financial aid programs by expected family contribution. This concludes my presentation, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Richards, for your thorough analysis. Are there any questions for him today? Seeing none, we will hear from the Student Financial Assistance Program.
Good afternoon, Chair Smith, Vice Chair Harris, and committee members. My name's Al Dorset. I have the honor of serving as the Executive Director for the Office of Student Financial Assistance at Maryland Higher Education Commission. Dr. Rai has graciously allowed me to lead the representation for Maryland Higher Education Commission. Chair Smith, I would like to share a few key points regarding the continuing work underway in MHEC's Office of Student Financial Assistance. Over the past year, the Office of Student Financial Assistance has implemented several significant improvements to enhance the financial aid process for students and families. Redesigning state financial aid principles to guide state aid policy making identifies 4 principles offered as guideposts for state policy leaders and other interested parties seeking to adjust, modify, or in some cases make full changes to state financial aid policies and programs. The 4 principles of state financial aid redesign are student-centered. Defining students as the primary beneficiaries of state financial aid allows for alignment of state goals and institutional practices to best serve students. Goal-driven and data-informed, aid programs should have a clearly defined and easily understood intent aligned with measurable state education and workforce goals. Timely and flexible, aid programs should provide financial support to students when they can have the greatest impact on enrollment and decision-making, even before the student chooses to enroll. Broadly inclusive, as the education delivery models of enrollment options available to students become more varied, aid programs should adapt to allow them to select options best designed to meet their needs. Over the past year, OSFA has had a few key development includes FAFSA simplification to MDCAP streamlining. The 25-26 application for federal student aid form has undergone changes which many of us know to simplify the application process and include a reduction in the number of questions, expanded eligibility for federal state aid, and more user-friendly model. Enhanced data integration and user-friendliness. OSFA has spearheaded the redesign and implementation of a new MDCAP system that we're working on, which will enhance data integration and mobile usability. Improve user support and resources. OSFA has increased support staff, refined confusing questions, and addressed specific glitches to enhance MDCAP submission experience. These improvements are designed to make financial aid application process more accessible, accurate, and user-friendly. We're continuing to make these improvements. It takes time to make these improvements, but it is our focus to push and make improvements so that more students have access to funds to help them attain their education. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are you answering the questions from the analysts?
Yes. So we've given you the written statements on the questions, and I'd be happy to go if there's any more detail on those. Specifically,
I really want this to be on the record. I want you to go question by question and answer them, please.
Sure, no problem. So on page 21, MHEC should provide information on the awards to date for the additional awards for funds. The Hoffman LARP program for the 24-25 award year remains open, and MHEC is still accepting applications. Currently, MHEC has received 316 applications, of which only 16 applicants qualified for program for $58,500. The Maryland Dental Care LARP program has a total of 20 applicants. MHEC anticipates $1 million will be awarded in MDC LARP. Applicants based on the amounts of identified in statute. MHEC is still in the process of accepting and reviewing applications for the 24-25 award year. The applications will remain open until March 21st, 2025. Next question on page 24. MHEC should comment on the communication measures it has taken to connect with police officers and probation agents about pursuing these programs. In November 2023, MHEC held a meeting with the governor's office to discuss outreach with Maryland FOP, Department of Corrections, Maryland State Police, and Natural Resource Police. Subsequently, a follow-up meeting was held with police agencies in an effort to expand outreach and education about the availability of police and probation agent scholarship funding. Additionally, in December 2024, when the new regulation changed, MHEC updated its website and sent a Gov delivery notice to over 120,000 stakeholders and posted on social media via LinkedIn, Facebook, and X, formerly known as Twitter. Also, MHEC has continuously promoted the police and probation agent scholarship in community outreach events under workforce grants, which is included in the financial aid PowerPoint presentation that has been shared to over 30 events the last year, hosting 5,000 applicants. Also, MHEC has promoted through Gov Delivery and social media police recruitment events in partnership with law enforcement agencies such as October 24 National Association of Women Law Enforcement Executives Recruitment Fair with over 10 federal agencies. Next question on page 28, MHEC should discuss why funds were reverted to the general fund as required. Do you want to take that one?
We're not, correct. Yes, following DBM's instructions during the fiscal 2024 closeout, the funding was put into our need-based student financial assistance fund. However, according to the legislative language for that program, it was discovered that those funds are supposed to be reverted to the general fund, not put on our need-based student financial assistance fund. We're now making the change. We're going to revert the funding. We missed the close of 2024, so we're doing it now.
Page 28, MHEC should comment on the potential of surveying the applicants on the scholarship process, including the financial aid portal, reasons for declining scholarships, and reasons for neither accepting nor declining awards. MHEC has already reached out to its vendor, which is currently Interclips, to see about how we can add additional enhancements to the system that when individuals decline the award or award is canceled, that there can be different reasons why. Reasons looking at if the institution is going out of state, if the institution will not be going to school at all, or if the institution or the student will going into another major. We are still talking with the vendor for individuals that do not reply or take no action, how we would be able to get some information on why they did not take any action.
I have a question. The vendor that we're currently using, is that a widely used vendor across the country?
No. The vendor that we're currently using actually is a smaller vendor, not the original vendor that created the MDCAP system. When we had an RFP years ago, they were the vendor that actually won the bid to take over and kind of maintain the system. The new vendor that has been selected is a more wider known vendor that is used at more places across the U.S.
I just have a question about, I guess, the process for selecting the vendor. Like, how open was this? Kind of, what type of expertise are y'all using to even assess the, I would like to know more about that.
Do you want it? Okay. Well, it was a, we followed the state procurement processes, RFP, received bids, and then we held meetings as an evaluation team with the the bidders, and chose, we believe, the best system out of the group that will meet the needs for what we need for the system. We did receive a couple of bid protests during the process, which slowed us down a bit. And the second bid protest actually went to appeal to the Board of Contract Appeals. But that has now cleared, so we're all set to go to the Board of Public Works and move forward.
Thank you. Please continue.
Page 29, the Department of Legislative Services recommends reducing $5 million in general funds to each fiscal 2025 and 2026 from the Community College Promise Scholarship due to the consistent underspending of the program. DLS has also recommended or recommends adding a provision to the BRFA to reduce the mandated funding level for the program from $15 million to $10 million. MHEC respectfully opposes this recommendation and suggests that any reduction in funds be postponed for at least 2 years. The Maryland Community College Promise Program, based off last year's legislation, has been pushed over to more of a decentralized program now. allowing institutions to spend the funds directly. Institutions have already identified to us that they've spent already about $9 million and are pushing and expecting to spend the full $15 million. So that's why MHEC respectfully opposes, to give it more time to see with this transition, what is that spending like for the institutions? Additionally, when you look at the apprenticeship push for more students to get apprenticeships, and Promise can be used to help assist in paying for apprenticeships, and as well as Promise going down to part-time, now allowing part-time students to receive the Promise Scholarship. A good 2 years will allow sufficient time to really see what that spending is like with the expanded group of eligible individuals.
Are there any other questions? I don't want to hog all of it. No? Okay, continue, please.
Page 31. DLS recommends reducing $4 million in special funds in each fiscal 2025 and 2026 for the teaching fellows for Maryland Scholarship due to underspending of the appropriation in the last 2 years. MHEC acknowledges the recommendation. Currently, for fiscal 2025, MHEC has awarded close to $12 million in teaching fellows for the Maryland Scholarship to 509 students. The reduction will leave enough remaining funds that even if the program still grows, there will be funds available for students there. Page 32, MHEC should recommend on their communication, or should comment, sorry, on their communication efforts to notify community college students of the scholarship program. MHEC continues to promote the 2+2 transfer scholarship during outreach events, both in person and online, where the financial aid PowerPoint presentation has been shared at over 30 events last year, hosting 5,000 participants. MHEC understands the crucial role to the 2+2 scholarship play in expanding access to education and fostering economic mobility. The 2+2 pathway makes higher education more accessible to students who otherwise may seek a degree. MHEC will redouble efforts to work more closely with Maryland Association of Community Colleges to identify key financial aid opportunities at community colleges across Maryland to increase promotion of this scholarship.
Okay, could we stop for a moment? So I noticed in the previous response related to the teaching fellows for Maryland Scholarship that even if we were in theory to adopt the proposed recommendation for reduction of the funding for the teaching fellows, that you're saying that you would still have enough remaining funds to grow the program. That sounds concerning to me, because I know we need teachers, and if there's some, I'm trying to understand the disconnect, because the need for teachers in Maryland is great. We have this significant funding mechanism to support these efforts. What am I not? I feel like I'm missing something here. Like if we cut the funding to this, it still wouldn't impact the program because it's already so deeply undersubscribed. Like that to me seems very alarming.
Right, so the key is there has been a push to increase teachers, and that is the push that continues to go. With decreasing the funding based off budget constraints and the need to decrease, that still leaves room that if the program increases as we're pushing it, there's still funding available there to keep those individuals and allow those individuals to receive funding. So it doesn't take away from us pushing for teachers, but it's showing right now that that funding is not being spent. We promote the program. We try to expand the program in every way. We can only go with what applicants that we're receiving, though, at the same point in time.
Now, some of you may know that in my day job, I work in a bureaucracy. I'm assistant director of a government agency at the municipal level. And I actually oversee like our websites and our public communications and our newsletters and everything that we do in the public. And so I'm just going to say that I'm not convinced, based on the conversation we're having here, that the best marketing and outreach job is happening, because so many people are desperate for financial support to pursue their career goals, and to have this money on the table, this is really distressing for me personally, and I think that we need to have another conversation offline about what can be done to improve your visibility and outcomes, because there are so many young people who I know would love to take advantage of this if they only knew. And a resource isn't a resource if you don't know about it. So thank you for bearing with me, but continue. Any other questions? I want to make sure I'm not hogging. Okay, continue.
MHEC should comment on when the agency anticipates submitting the report. We did submit the report via email on January 9th, and we mailed it this week, 5 copies. So that report's in. Yes. As far as releasing the $100,000, MHEC concurs. And then the other report, this is a joint report. MSDE has been administering the Next Generation Scholars Program for the last several years. So they have been submitting the report. Our understanding was the report was submitted. We actually got acknowledgement back from the Legislative Library saying that we should not submit the report because it was, please note that only one entity should be submitting this report. So we're just now working through trying to find out what happened.
That was the last question.
Yeah, well, I have the recommended actions.
Okay, you want to do it?
Sure, as far as the recommended actions are concerned, reducing promise by $5 million, we respectfully oppose that reduction for the answers that Mr. Dorsett mentioned. For the $4 million, I believe we'll have some additional conversations about that. We believe we can absorb it for now, but we can follow up on that one. The adopting the following narrative on the impact of credit completion requirement on financial aid awards, we concur with that. The next generation, excuse me, the report on the Next Generation Scholars post-secondary outcomes, MHEC concurs. And I believe the final recommendation is just a repeat of the $5 million reduction.
Are there any other questions for those assembled? Well, I want to say that when Secretary Rye graciously allowed you to come speak today, I don't know if that was him being so kind. But I know that you have a difficult job. We want to be a partner and we want to be helpful, but in the budgetary times we're in, when people are really asking all of us to look for $50 million plus in cuts, don't make it easy. That's all I ask.
Yes, thank you for your attention. Thank you for your guidance. And we understand these are tough budget times. And we will do everything from our end to make sure that we help the state. At the same time, the important mission that MHEC has, we want to deliver. Our teaching fellows, I completely agree with you. We have to make more students interested in teaching. And also, in shortage areas, whether it's content-wise, math, science teaching, and those things, and also in our rural areas, we're trying to get alternative certification, teaching as a second career. Unfortunately, as you know very well from the news, a lot of Marylanders are impacted through different, especially federal workers. There are lots of opportunity to bring their experiences in our classroom and have some of these funds available. Some of these grants, like Promise Scholarship, why it was not used. I spent 20 years at a community college. First, when Promise Scholarship came, one had to be a full-time student. Community colleges have 2/3 students. So we have been making changes, and thank you to Vice Chair Harris for his support. This year, again, we have a bill that makes it easier for students to access these scholarships. All these funds, we really appreciate that they're available, and we'll make sure they get to right students. Thank you.
Thank you so much. There's no other witnesses that are signed up, so that would conclude the budget hearing for MHEC Student Financial Assistance.
Thank you very much.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Oh.
Delegate Forbes, I apologize.
Madam Chair, I was late. Wasn't your fault, it was all on me. Thank you so much for your presentation. The Teaching Fellows for Maryland Scholarship Program, you said you awarded to 509 recipients. Do you know what the average award was per recipient?
I do not have that on me right now, but I can get you that information.
Thank you very much, I appreciate it.
Anyone else before they get up? Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very
That now
much.
concludes the budget hearing for MHEC student financial assistance. Next up will be Baltimore City Community College, and we'll begin with an analysis from Kelly Norton.
Thank you. We're going to start on page 4 with Exhibit 1, which shows enrollment from fall 2018 to 2024. From 2017 to 2019, BCCC's enrollment grew by 721 students, or 17%. However, as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, enrollment had fallen significantly from 2019 to 2021, decreasing by 1,045 students, or 21%. Total enrollment increased for the second consecutive year by 436 students, or 11.1% in fall 2024 compared to fall 2023. The first-time student population increased for a third consecutive year, growing by 25.5% in fall 2024. The dual enrollment student population experienced its first increase since fall 2021, growing 56.8% in fall 2024. Exhibit 2 on page 6 looks at the successful persistent rate for BCCC. While four-year institutions use graduation as a measure of success, community colleges use the successful persistent rate. A successful persister is a student who attempts 18 or more credits in their first 2 years and after 4 years is still enrolled, has graduated, or has transferred to another institution. The exhibit shows the rates of college-ready students, those who did not need any developmental courses, and developmental completers, those who completed required developmental courses and later completed their program course requirements. Students who are developmental completers at BCCC have tended to have higher persistent rates than those who were considered college-ready. For the 2019 cohort, developmental completers attained a successful persistent rate of 66%, while college-ready students attained a rate of 70%. BCCC attributes this to the college-ready cohort being a small cohort of 33 students compared to 380 developmental completers. Exhibit 3 on page 7 adds the developmental non-completer category to the persisting data. Developmental non-completers are students who did not complete their required developmental coursework within 4 years. As seen in Exhibit 3, at 20% for the 2019 cohort, these students have a persistent rate that is significantly lower than the college-ready and developmental completer populations. The developmental non-completer rate of persistence decreased from 30% from the 2018 cohort. Moving to the budget, Exhibit 4 on pages 8 through 9 provides a summary of the budget changes for unrestricted funds by program from fiscal 2024 to 2025. The educational and general expenditures total increases by $7.3 million, or 12.6% over fiscal 2024. Instruction costs are expected to increase by $6.7 million, academic support by $2.4 million, and institutional support by $2 million due to increased enrollment and associated costs. Exhibit 5 on page 10 provides an overview of the BCCC funding formula. As shown in the exhibit, absent hold harmless funding, BCCC's fiscal 2026 allowance would be $27.3 million, or $20.7 million below the previous year's funding level. As a result, the hold harmless provision takes effect, resulting in the institution's funding level reaching $48 million. When the English for speakers of other languages funded is included, BCCC's total funding level reaches $48.4 million for fiscal 2026. There seems to be an inconsistency with the FTEs count for the fiscal 2026 formula. The previous fiscal year, DBM used the FTE count as reported by MHEC, but this year's figure is the amount as reported by BCCC. BCCC should comment on how we'll work with MHEC to assure consistent reporting of their FTEs. The BRFA of 2025 sets an amount of funding for BCCC in fiscal 26 of $44,734,265. This provision both reduces the amount required in fiscal 26 and would change the hold harmless minimum moving forward to $44.4 million for the BCCC funding formula. BCCC has been in hold harmless since fiscal 2015. Language in the fiscal 2026 budget bill will reduce the general fund appropriation for BCCC by $3.6 million, contingent on the enactment of this provision. Exhibit 6 on page 11 shows state support per FTEs. Due to inclining enrollment since fiscal 2020, state support per FTEs has increased from $11,010 to $24,470 in fiscal 2024. That is an increase of 122.3%. State support per FTEs is expected to remain above $20,000 for fiscal 2025 and 2026. Discussion of the proposed budget is found on page 12 with Exhibit 7, identifying those budget adjustments. For fiscal 2025, 2026, the total state support decreases 7.3% or $3.5 million after accounting for a proposed deficiency and a contingent reduction. Total funding increases by $2.4 million and includes pay-go funds for deferred maintenance at the college. Those pay-go funds are from the college's fund balance. When excluding the pay-go funds, total funding decreases $6.6 million or 7.4%. When reviewing the personnel data for BCCC, as is shown on page 13, the college had 103 vacancies above the budgeted turnover rate. DLS asked the president to comment on the continued high vacancy rate, efforts to reduce vacant positions, and the effect that the vacancies are having on the college's ability to meet its goals. Moving to the issues, the only issue begins on page 14 and covers enrollment in the Merit Scholars Program. As is shown in Exhibit 8 on page 15, total FTE enrollment has steadily declined at the college since 2011. FTEs increased in fiscal 2024 by 25% when compared to fiscal 2023. The budget anticipates BCCC's FTEs enrollment to grow in fiscal 2025, increasing by 2% when compared to the fiscal 2024 actuals. Exhibit 9 on page 16 covers the Merit Scholars Program cohort size. There has been an increase in applications since the 2019 cohort, with the exception of the 2023 cohort. However, summer bridge enrollment and yield rate has decreased over the same period, with the 2023 cohort decreasing to 180 students from the high of 429 students in the 2019 cohort. While there has been an overall decline in the yield rate since the 2019 cohort, the 2023 cohort's yield rate of 11.6% is higher than the previous cohort's rate of 9.9%. Exhibit 10 on page 17 shows the second-year retention rates for the fall 2018 through 2022 cohorts in the Merit Scholars Program. The second-year retention rate increased from 14% for the fall 2021 cohort to 71% for the fall 2022 cohort. The president should comment on strategies BCCC has used to increase the retention rate for the Merit Scholars Program students. Exhibit 11 on page 18 shows the financial aid awards for year 1 in the Merit Scholars Program. Exhibit 11 shows each cohort's total financial award and the corresponding average award for year 1. The 2019 cohort had the highest amount of aid in year 1 with $1.2 million due to having the largest cohort. The average award has increased from $936 for cohort 2018 to $2,850 for cohort 2023. The City of Baltimore has been funding the MSP program since fiscal 2019. In fiscal 2024, the City of Baltimore decided to phase out funding for the program due to its overlapping with a similar program at Coppin State University. In fiscal 2025, BCCC received no funding for the MSP program from the city. The president should detail the future of the scholarship program if there are plans to rebrand it in the near future. The DLS recommended actions are found on page 19. The recommendation is requesting a report on enrollment in the Merit Scholars Program. And with that, I conclude my presentation.
Thank you so much, Ms. Norton, for your analysis. Are there any questions for her today? Seeing none, we welcome up Dr. McCurdy and her team. You're probably better prepared than most of us for this weather as a native Canadian, so she's tough.
Yes, my roots do go back. Good afternoon. Chairman Smith, Vice Chair, members of the subcommittee, and for the record, I am Dr. Deborah McCurdy, President, Baltimore City Community College, and I have with me today a group. I have at the end Ms. Donna Thomas, she's the interim VP for Student Affairs. Ms. Eileen Watkins, she is the Director of Institutional Research. Ms. Becky Burrell, she is the Vice President for Institutional Effectiveness Research Planning. Ms. Eileen Hawkins, Ms. Eileen Waitsman, she's the controller of the institution, and as well several others have joined me today. Mr. Michael Thomas, he is the VP for Workforce. Mr. Eric Benjamin, he is new to our institution. He's coming in as Vice President for Academic Affairs, and we welcome him. Mr. Gus Augustus, and he is Vice President for Advancement. It's important that the team from Baltimore City Community College also join during these hearings. Thank you as well for the opportunity, Chairman Smith, as well as Vice Chair and committee members. We've spent considerable time with the DL analyst Kelly Norton back and forth as we've reviewed so much of the information that's been brought forward to us. I've been with Baltimore City Community College since 2019, and I am pleased to talk about the resilience of this institution and the growth. We continue with a student-first model, building on our mission as well to change lives and build communities. I'd like to at least share some things. We'll get into the comments and the recommendations as well and respond to those. The economic impact for this institution continues to grow. We're about 275 plus million that we pour into the Baltimore city economy. This is equal to a number of sums that comes from our operational spending, our student spending, and our alumni spending, and we're very pleased to continue to grow to make these contributions. One of our most recent accomplishments is to acknowledge the Middle States Commission, which is critical for any institution, to have that reaffirmation of its institution. We have now been reaffirmed from Middle States, and we do not expect to see another site visit until 2031-32. This is an extraordinary feat, I think, for this institution, considering that we have not had that reaffirmation to that extent since the late 90s, right around the 2000 mark. They have just left us several months ago with our reaffirmation. Not only did we have this reaffirmation, but during the 23-24 year, it is important to talk about these reaffirmations because the basis of the institution and the realignment that came out of this legislature really spoke to the operations and the efficiencies and the effectiveness of Baltimore City Community College. So not only in 2024 did we get reaffirmed, also dental hygiene from their commission, we will not see another site visit for them until 2030. Nursing program, we will not see through ASIN. We will not see another visit, and their next evaluation will be 2032. The accreditation for the business schools and programs, just recently that team left. We will not see another self-study until 2034, and through the health area for our EMS program, we will not see a comprehensive evaluation until 2029. And it's important to note again that all these reaccreditations took place in the last 14, 16 months at this institution. At the same time, looking at what is occurring at this institution, early January, a fire occurred in the main boiler room of the Life Science building. We mention that because life science is one of the main arteries for Baltimore City Community College. It's some 80,000 square feet that has been fully taken offline. So in the third week of the spring semester, we now have our main building that has been taken offline. What does that mean? Some 60 faculty staff offices are offline, affecting 172 course sections, which means they either went to virtual, some went to online, and where we could shift some elsewhere, we have. 37 classrooms are now unavailable. What we do have to speak to is the Department of General Services, who immediately came on site and has been with us ever since to try to remedy the damage. Significance of that building, the dental hygiene clinic is on the first floor, which means that students cannot complete their programs without having their labs and their clinics open. We've recently, within the last 2 days, found a way to transform, just for a minute, for the lower level of LSB, and to restart for those students who will have to spend time over the break, could go into the summer. They're going to have to make up that time. It almost smacks of COVID, when we had everything out of whack, and now we still have a very critical program that is out of whack but coming back into existence. The price tag is going to be tremendous. Just the cleanup is going to broach about $1 million just for the cleanup. That's not everything else that has to be fixed, replaced with technologies, floors, walls, everything else, and then getting everyone in. Floor 4, 3, and 2 are not back online, and we expect they will not be online for some time. We will persevere and continue to offer the services and to get these students through in the manner in which they deserve at this institution. I want to also point out about our enrollment, because for the past 2 years, our enrollment has increased. Fall, winter, spring, summer, consistency. So for the fall of 23, it increased by 11% over fall of 22. Fall of 24 increased by 11% over fall of 23. Winter increased from winter 24 coming from winter 23 was a 25% increase. Winter 25, which we just passed, increased 39% over the previous winter. Spring 24 increased 21% over spring 23. Spring 25 to date reflects a 13% increase. And summer to summer, we have an 11% increase, and we'll wait to see what this summer brings us as well. We are aware of the MHEC projections in enrollment as well. We're about 100 students shy of that, but we will reach and exceed those numbers as well. Student First model is alive and well at this institution. I've been there going into a 6th year, but for the past 7 years, so it preceded me by a year or 2. We continue to charge at $110 per credit hour. So we've not changed tuition for these students in well over 7 years. Bringing other things immediately to highlight in terms of what we've done with the realignment and the changes that had to be made at the institution to turn the college differently. We have now fully implemented the ERP infrastructure. That was a $7-point-something million infrastructure as well. We're now on the second phase, looking at advisory services where consultants are now coming in to make certain that the implementation phases for major frontline services now can fully take place with the day-to-day support. We're pleased to work with DO-IT and have done so over the last 4 or 5 years as well. Partnerships with Baltimore City Public Schools are continuing as we look at the blueprint for Maryland's future as well, and looking at how we can get in and work with them to reestablish dual enrollment to a greater extent, looking at math, looking at English, and we've added science to put developmental math, developmental English, developmental science back into Baltimore City Public Schools, so when the students leave, they have already progressed to the point where they can earn college credit. MSP, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that on the recommendations, which is a last dollar scholarship program, and really has come forward very strongly out of Baltimore City Public Schools. The last thing I want to talk about the realignment projects and process at Baltimore City Community College. You know we're under realignment. Those 12 tasks that were put in place back in 2017-18 continue to be a big part of the strategic direction for the institution. And when we begin to look at the tasks, which are all state mandated, we look at task 10, which were capital improvements as we continue to move along, improve the facilities and the systems. We're aware downtown, one of the major projects under this task was the BARD site. That building has now been completely demolished, and we have now turned that site into, and it will be into, a site that is a grass site that we will continue to work with those in the larger community downtown as well. As well, a vision came forward for the BARD site to expand programs and services down there. So we would be looking at bringing in STEM programs, cyber, health, engineering, criminal justice. I think that the direction there to take down 160,000 square feet, to turn that into green space for the moment until we work with the state and others to look at how we can put a new fixture there, but the vision really was to put in new programs as well. We've come forward with our strategic planning. All of this is part of the realignment of the institution and the strategic plan and the development of that plan. That states well, that's the delivery of our promise, aligning our strengths and expanding our reach, doing all of this under shared governance infrastructure, which is a new structure that brings together individuals at all levels, and we can begin to talk about program planning, policy planning, and a shared governance infrastructure that will outline a process for inclusive decision-making among constituents, and so that is all in progress as well. I'm going to end my comments there and go into the recommendations. Chair Smith, if there are any questions with anything that I have raised at this time, if not, I will go into the comments and the questions that have been raised by our DLS analyst. Okay. On page 5, the comment was, and the context for this was really around enrollment increases. The comment was to adopt the committee's narrative requesting a report on enrollment in the Merit Scholars Program. The college does accept the committee narrative as noted on the operating budget recommended actions section as well. We'd also like to note one change, that there's a correction from the FY26 analysis. Our credit enrollment increased by 11% and not 10%, but we will continue as well to report on the enrollment and the Merit Scholars Program. Also on page 5, under proposed deficiency appropriation as well, the context was the fiscal 2025 adjusted working appropriations. The comment is that the president should comment on how the additional funds will be expended. In 24, for FY25, the college received an extension for her funds from the U.S. Department of Education. We have until June 2025 to expend those funds. Those funds are going to continue to be used to assist our students with textbooks, access codes, the shipping costs for the textbooks, tuition and fees. For the last few years, the college has consistently picked up the tuition for our students, and it has certainly made a tremendous difference. In addition, those dollars will be used to upgrade and provide additional instructional technology, equipment, and furniture. Many of the buildings are old and need other types of repairs. The fixtures, the furniture and fixtures are as antiquated as well. Those funds are going to be shifted over to improve the furnishings and the fixtures that have to go along with the new technology as well. And I'll ask our controller if there's anything as well to add to the proposed deficiency.
Thank you, Dr. McCurdy. The HER funds, I just want to comment, the HER funds have been used, the institutional HER funds that we're talking about have been used tremendously on supporting our students. As Dr. McCurdy stated, we've paid for a lot of tuition and fees during the summer, and some semesters we paid for books during the entire COVID period and continue to do so. We paid for shipping books, and we've done a lot of improvements to labs and the technology in those labs that the students use. So we continue to do that and have that student first mentality that is so critical why we're here. Are there any questions?
Thank you. Page 6. The comment, BCCC should comment on how it will work with MHEC to ensure consistent reporting of their FTEs and what are the sources for the 404 FTEs. We do agree that the reporting of FTEs in Exhibit 5 appears to be inconsistent. What we have noted was the actual eligible FTEs for the 2025 change would be an increase of 24.5% rather than a decrease of 20.1%, and we would suggest that this be reviewed again and by MHEC, DBM, DLS, and the college, and I'll ask as well Ms. Hawkins, who's Director of Institutional Research, to speak to the FTEs and any inconsistency that is appearing.
Thank you, ma'am. Good afternoon. Exhibit 5 reflects the fiscal year 24 FTEs at 2040, which is the credit eligible FTEs. The college did report an additional 1,006 continuing education eligible FTEs, which is missing from this, but it is included on Exhibit 8. So Exhibit 8 does reflect both the eligible credit and ineligible credit FTEs for a total of 3,047, which is what was reported to MHEC for fiscal 24 and reflected back in their transmittal report sent back to Dr. McCurdy. I'd be happy to address any questions.
Delegate Grace.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. So my question has to do with the Promise Award. And it looks like there's some really big challenges with that. The total, well, $15,000 is what's budgeted, and it's been allocated, and only $2.9 million was actually awarded. And for Baltimore City Community College, you guys were allocated $887,000 and awarded $840,000. So 95% of what was allocated was actually awarded, but what was actually only approved was $84,000. It looks like we have 2 other community colleges that had 0. So only 10% of what was allocated was actually awarded. Can you explain what's going on with that? Because it's,
yes,
there's plenty of demand for it, but it doesn't seem like the students are actually getting it.
Absolutely. Ms. Thomas, can you elaborate on the award?
Sure, thank you for your question. We were allocated approximately $887,000 for the year. We took that annual amount and we split it between our credit and non-credit side. We do anticipate spending that full amount. Our financial aid office has communicated that they have continuously made the awards to students. We can provide a full update to you on the amount that we have awarded to date to those students on both the credit and the non-credit side. And
so
we
there's
can
not a
provide
problem
that update.
with MHEC's MD caps. There's not a problem with actually getting the money, is it, from MHEC?
So the funds have been decentralized to the college, and so the college is making the awards to those eligible recipients once they have been identified on both the credit and the non-credit side.
Gotcha, so they'll get the money then, excellent.
So we are making awards.
Okay. Also on page 6 on personnel data, the president should comment on the continued high vacancy rate, efforts to reduce vacant positions, and the effect that the vacancies are having on the college's ability to meet goals. Our response, the factors contributing to the 32.5% vacancy rate, obviously retirements, resignations continue to play a significant role over the last few years. We've had significant retirements, certainly among the faculty. We're now beginning to see more retirements coming out of the staff side as well. As we continue to realign campus operations, and again, this was all part of the mandate for the institution, we do continue to aggressively look to fill. These positions are noted on our websites as well, so we're not holding the positions. We're in the process of revamping the hiring and onboarding process. Under the leadership of a new Assistant Vice President for Human Resources, all of Human Resources now is being revisited and revamped, realigned. That will make a big difference. Some of this is response to very early reports of the college that predated me or came on just as I was entering the institution, the Edbridge report that talked about the institution, that talked about the positions that were at the institution, ways in which the college should integrate positions, realign positions for the institution as well, and really that is the direction that the college continues to take as we look and assess at various areas to look at the needs, to look at the skill sets, and where the college needs to take these positions in order to improve the efficiency and the effectiveness and to serve the students. It is a student-first modeled institution. We're also responding overall, this fits in with the realignment to 12 tasks that we're responsible for putting forward for the institution. So we're not unlike other institutions that are also suffering from vacant positions, looking for people to fill these positions, exploring other sources, exhausting other sources to fill these positions. And so it's an ongoing process for us to post positions, for us to review resumes coming in. We have just purchased a new infrastructure software system for the review of applications as well that ultimately will make a huge difference in screening. So it isn't for lack of effort that the college is putting out. All cabinet members have as a mandate that they will review the positions to look at their organizational charts and align their charts with goals and opportunities that we have for growing the institution. So there's no lack of effort. We understand and acknowledge that we have a vacancy rate, and I can only assure you that the college is continuing to move forward to fill these positions.
Dr. McCurdy, so as you know, we hear from a lot of different institutions, not just higher ed, they're having a hard time finding staff, right? Mm-hmm. And so 32% is still pretty high, even within that regard. Just remember, you could always reach out to us as thought partners, not just during session, but outside of session, because there might be some really, there's a lot of movement happening in the country right now. If anything, perhaps Maryland will seem like a more enticing place to provide some of these services, and might be a way that we could put our heads together. But just want to lift that up.
I would agree, and I certainly appreciate that support and direction. We are having those dialogues down to look at and not trying to capitalize on the downfalls in other areas, but if people are there and who are available and will fit our positions, they make sense. Many people working in various other agencies, certainly at the federal government, state government, our doors are wide open as we continue to beat the bushes for bringing people on board. And so we've seen some change in higher education in previous years. It was a closed network. You only hired within higher education. And that certainly has changed. So if I look at the table, Ms. Donna Thomas came out of, previously had not been fully with higher. She'd been back and forth. She'd been with MHAC and another private institution, and she's now joined us as well. So I think that we could certainly count the number of people who we have either invited, borrowed, or otherwise from other entities, and to attract them to Baltimore City Community College. So if there's some outreach, we would certainly appreciate a note or getting people to go online. The positions are posted. The salaries are now posted. They are competitive salaries as well. So I do thank you. Mayor Scholars, we're also on page 7 as well, the Mayor Scholars Program, and I know we're getting a lot of attention of the Mayor Scholars Program, and certainly we should understand that this program serves as that stepping stone and that open door for students coming in. It's almost your freshman class of students coming in. So we move students from dual enrollment into the Mayor Scholars Program into Baltimore City Community College. The comment is the president should comment on strategies BCCC has used to increase the retention rate for MSP students. And we have been with MSP certainly for some years. It started in 17-18 as I was coming in the door. We have had some growth. We're beginning to see a rebound on the growth of this program. And Ms. Thomas, would you talk a little bit about the strategies, because she oversees the enrollment side and the admissions side of the house?
Yes, thank you, Dr. McCurdy. Some of the strategies that we are looking at right now and moving forward with is definitely reaching out to students to address their financial needs. Again, MSP is that last dollar program, but in addition to that, we know that our students still also have those financial barriers that they're dealing with. In the classroom, we're taking care of their tuition and fees, but also some of those community priorities that they have outside of the classroom. So engaging them with those supports, both in the classroom and outside. We also are making sure that we're providing them with those support services, aligning them with those tutors. We're also looking at embedding the tutors in the program with MSP. That was a success when we do it during the summer. So also making sure that we're doing it throughout the fall and the spring. Making sure that when we're doing those check-ins, it's happening more frequently. Now that MSP has all of the supports in place, and what I mean by that is fully staffed. We now have our director that has been hired. Our director has been on board now with us for 3 months, so we have now all of our staff there with our coordinator and our advisor, which means that we can provide more support to our students and being able to do more check-ins. So by putting all of those resources in place, that also goes toward building the retention and putting that alignment in place for our students. So with that in place, we feel that we can be more successful putting forth those retention efforts to see better outcomes and supports for our students.
Well, I definitely look forward to now that you have the full staffing, just continuing to see, the program to grow and the support of the students. So thank you for those details.
Absolutely. And Dr. McCurdy, if I can also add on to the question that was raised earlier, one thing that is important to note about MSP compared to Promise is that since our program is very similar to the Promise Scholarship, we also compete a lot of times with that last dollar program for Promise. And I do have the numbers in my other notebook that's in the chair. So if you give me a moment after we are finished, I can also give you the current number that we did make awards to right now. After this hearing, I can give you that number. But I did just want to echo that we do compete a lot of times with Promise and MSP because both of those programs are last dollar. But we did see a significant increase in the number of awards that we did make in fiscal year 25 since the program has been decentralized in the Promise Scholarship. But I can share those numbers with you.
Okay. I believe the last question on page 8 is also on the Merit Scholars program. Again, it has been in place since 2018. The comment is that the president should detail the future of the scholarship program and if there are plans to rebrand it in the future. When I came to the institution, there was a sense that there would be 250. That was the goal, that you would bring 250 students in annually, and then that you would move them through those 3 years until they graduated from the institution. But the goal was 250. We exceeded that goal those first few years. We had a slump year and the enrollment dropped some. We have now recovered in that regard as well. But I do want you to know throughout this time, while the city did provide some funding, it is a last dollar scholarship, which meant the students had to apply for financial aid in the first instance, and then the remainder of that would be picked up by the city. But there were other expenses that never came to anyone's real attention, probably except the institution. The cost to run that program is tremendous. That means you have staffing for that program throughout the year. That means that you have instructors who have to be a part of this program in the summer and bringing on additional staff during the year. And so what we do know is that the price tag for just staffing it well exceeded $500,000 just to staff this program. The change came about as we came on board with a new administration to take the program and integrate all of the functions into the normal functions of the institution. If you were in admissions, then part of your role was to do outreach for admissions, including Merit Scholars, not having a separate admissions entity. The same thing for financial aid, the same thing for advising, that yes, there would be a core group of people there, but not to the extent that it excluded and segregated this program so that you had Merit Scholars everything instead of it being an integral part of the college. That has changed so that Merit Scholars is now an integral part of the program. We continue to grow that and strengthen it, but that's what it should be and not have a separate everything for Merit Scholars. And so when we look at changes for that as well, it was called Merit Scholars from the inception. And it was supposed to just be for Baltimore, basically. And we've now grown that and expanded that to beyond the city, which would make a huge difference in likely we'll begin to talk about as city scholars designation, where the mayor's office, the college, and other entities can share in promoting support for this group of individuals as well, where other dollars would be coming in through philanthropic modes, as well as the college continuing to provide support for this program. So it doesn't get any better than us being able to grow our own and to move them from one level, which is high school, through dual enrollment, through Mayor's Scholars. And we've already identified our freshman class from the onset this year. Last point, as we had a very successful opening summer for our students, and this is the first year that we've had it in. Ms. Thomas drove that. Ms. Thomas, how many students did we have on campus this summer to open up the year and to get them registered into Baltimore City?
Yes, this summer we did our new student orientation with our on campus. It was held in the summer. We did it outside, which was new. And we had approximately 500 students on site to offer them with a new student orientation. It provided on-site registration and advising for our students, where they were able to do kind of a one-stop shop event where they were able to see on-site advising, registration, even we did admissions on the spot. So that was new this year. It was a great opportunity even for them to meet with the academic side, to meet with deans and associate deans to learn more about the programs of interest, and even meet with athletics, anything to get the full student experience. So it was a great event, and we look forward to doing it again this year and having more students. My goal is 750. Madam President.
Appreciate that, and let me just say that the model is not new. Most schools where I have been, and all of you who came through higher education, you all went to student orientations, big orientations to kick it off for the freshman year. This college, as in BCCC, did not do that. So what's new is to get with it, BCCC, and to begin to open the doors and begin to put in place this type of structure that we would have students come. It wasn't just students, it was families coming as well, and that's the difference, to move the institution to a model of success in a student-first model. That's what this is supposed to be. I do thank you, Madam Chairman and committee members. I do thank you for the continued support of this institution. We have a long ways to go. I know we have some cuts ahead as everyone else, but I can tell you that this institution is one that can probably least afford cuts. But we're going to continue this journey and keep serving these students in Baltimore City.
Are there any questions? Delegate Grist.
Comment. I won't need the data. I just want to know, because it's, 33% of that promised scholarship budget is proposed to be cut. I just want to make sure that that money's actually being spent. So I believe what you're saying. I don't need the data. I don't need the data. So
thank you for that.
Thank you.
Any other questions or remarks? Thank you for being so generous with your time and your team. You have a lot of your leaders here with us. And I know we kind of arrived here at the same time after the realignment. All that stuff predates kind of both of us arriving. And so while there was a lot of progress, being made, COVID happened. And now I see everyone's coming out of COVID very strong. So you spoke to the resilience, obviously, of the institution, but I think it's also your team and the students. It's everyone. So just thank you for all that you're doing. And we want to continue to see BCCC soar. So thank you so much. We do have some additional witnesses. I want to make sure, is Nina Kutnitsky here? In person? Did I hear something? Please. So you're dismissed, and then Nina will come forward.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much. And please, Nina, say your name appropriately on the record when you get to the microphone so that your name is pronounced correctly. I apologize.
My name's Nina Koneski. Good morning, esteemed legislators. My name is Nina Koneski, president of AFSCME Local 1870 at Baltimore City Community College. Thank you for this opportunity to highlight critical workplace issues and student success issues. Point 1, workplace environment and productivity. Leadership offices are modern, but frontline employees work with outdated, damaged furniture. We believe a professional working environment leads to better services for students. Upgrading office spaces should be priority. Point 2, Americans with Disabilities Act accommodations. A flawed process leading to lawsuits. Employees have waited up to 4 months for ADA accommodations due to unnecessary administrative bottlenecks. Delays often make accommodations irrelevant by the time they're approved. This must be changed. Point 3, teleworking, a necessary policy. While other institutions offer telework in line with state policies, Baltimore City Community College does not. A clear telework policy would enhance flexibility, productivity, and employee morale. Point 4, investing in dedicated employees. Contractual employees filling critical roles for years deserve stability and fair treatment. Converting them to permanent positions recognizes their service and improves retention. Point 5, communication and collaboration. Leadership must engage in meaningful dialogue with employees and the union. A well-structured communicative institution is key to improving the student experience. A call to action. Addressing these issues strengthens Baltimore City Community College's future and ensures a thriving institution. ASME and Local 1870 supports the governor's revenue plans and seeks your backing in making Baltimore City Community College a better place. Please review my written testimony for more detailed accounts, as my testimony has been shortened for the sake of time. Thank you for your time and your consideration.
Thank you for your time, your patience, waiting to provide your testimony today, and also for your service to the students and the campus community at BCCC. Are there any questions? Seeing none, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
We do have one additional witness that will be participating virtually, and that would be Todd Reynolds. Hello, Todd. I don't know, can you hear us? You're way in the clouds. Can you hear us? You're on mute. There you go.
2025, and I still haven't figured that out. Thank you so much.
It's okay.
Thank you so much, Chair Smith and members of the House Education and Economic Development Subcommittee. My name is Dr. Todd Reynolds. I'm the political coordinator for the AFT Maryland. AFT Maryland and its affiliate, the American Association of University Professors, we're the certified bargaining representative for 8 community colleges in the state for the full-time faculty. That would include the full-time faculty at BCCC. We're here to call on the legislature to reject the proposed state cuts to Baltimore City Community College in the governor's proposed budget, as well to ask the legislator to place more scrutiny on some of the school's actions to outsource some vital yet everyday management activities to high-priced law firms, when the school could just as easily handle some of these functions with the staff it currently employs. We've submitted some written testimony, so I just want to highlight a few things to be brief. I know it's been a long day for everybody, and there's one more hearing for an agency. But the proposed cuts, as Dr. McCurdy ended with, this school can really ill afford any more cuts as among any other agency. But these cuts are going to be absolutely devastating to BCCC. And I think I'd point out, no other community college in the state is seeing these level of cuts for 2 years in a row, despite the increase, the analysis and the school brought up, increases in enrollment. Last year, the proposed Budget and Reconciliation and Financing Act was planning to cut over 5%, and this year is a 7% cut in state support. So these reductions are going to have a devastating impact on our college and will hurt the ability of thousands of disadvantaged students to realize their dream of attending college and working towards their degree. Also, in this time of belt tightening, everyone's being asked to tighten their belt. We must draw the subcommittee's attention to some instances of what we think might be wasteful spending at the college. Despite the above-mentioned cuts, the agency has entered into a private contract with a national firm known for being their anti-union or aggressively anti-union tactic at the bargaining table. Even though the college is one of the most experienced institutions in the state when it comes to bargaining contracts with their employees, They've been bargaining with AFSCME. We just had a representative, my sibling from AFSCME, testify. They've been bargaining with AFSCME since the early 2000s, but the school has entered into a contract with Jackson Lewis, a firm that's been employed by Starbucks, Amazon, and others known to stall progress towards a contract at the bargaining table. They've employed Jackson Lewis to handle their contract with the faculty union. To date, the specifics of this contract are not known. There's no record of a procurement award to this firm with the state's Board of Public Works, nor do the published minutes of the agendas at BCCC's board give any detail of this contract. But I will say, if we can extrapolate and speculate, similar contracts between Jackson Lewis and other higher ed institutions in the country have the schools pay that firm $1.1 million over 2 years to handle contract negotiations. So we have to ask, how can the state really afford to spend its limited resources in such an inefficient manner, especially since the college has been as one of the most experienced institutions with negotiating contracts with its employees? We hope the committee will scrutinize this element of BCCC's budget more thoroughly. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Reynolds, for your testimony and for your advocacy. Are there any questions for him today? Thank you so much, and I hope your daughter's enjoying her snow day.
Yes, thank you.
All right. All right, that will conclude the budget hearing for BCCC. We'll now be moving on to the State Lottery and Gaming Control Agency, and Elizabeth Weibel will provide analysis.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. On page 2, you'll see there's some information about a proposed efficiency for fiscal 2025 in this agency, an additional $830,000 for vendor fees. Those fees are based in part on the amount of revenue that's coming in, so when the lottery revenues increase, so do the vendor fees. There's also a fund swap in the video lottery terminal and gaming operations section, reducing the general fund by $418,000 and instead using program revenues. Moving on to the fiscal 2026 allowance, that increases about $9 million or 7% to a total of $133 million. And about 90% of that is special funds from gaming revenues. You'll see in Exhibit 1 on page 3 an overview of the fiscal 2026 budget. 42% of the budget is for the central monitoring and control contracts. These are the contracts that cover things like equipment and monitoring for instant ticket machines, lottery control, ticket printing and distribution, and monitoring slot machines at casinos. And there is some variability to how much these contracts cost from year to year, in part because of those vendor fees that I mentioned, that are partly based on revenues, but also because the actual cost of the lottery games can vary if they're using branded content like Ravens logo or Monopoly theme. 31% of the allowance is for regular personnel costs, and then 15% goes to advertising. Those personnel and contract costs are also the primary source of increases in the proposed budget, as you can see in Exhibit 2 on page 5. Salary and fringe benefits increase about $4.7 million. There's also one new position for a lottery sales rep working with retail stores, but this is more than offset by the agency eliminating 5 unneeded contractual FTEs. The monitoring and control contracts increase about $5.7 million, but that's still roughly in line with the previous 4-year average, maybe a little bit higher than average. There are 2 BRFA provisions that would raise taxes on gaming. This wouldn't directly affect the agency's budget, but I'll mention them. They would raise the table games tax rate from 20% to 25%, and the mobile sports betting tax rate from 15% to 13%. And the extra would go to the general fund through fiscal 2027, and then after that to the education trust fund in the case of the table games and to the blueprint fund in the case of the sports betting. Key observations begin on page 6. All the gaming revenues were either flat or slightly down in fiscal 2024, except for sports betting, which is up. Lottery sales were $2.7 billion, which is a 1% decrease from the prior year. The general fund revenue from the lottery was $655 million, but that is projected to decrease in fiscal 2025 due to an expected decrease in sales and also because of an increase in other disbursements. You'll see some of those other disbursements on page 7, stadium financing, transit, and local impact grants. Supplemental stadium financing in particular is expected to take a larger portion of lottery revenues in the next few years. Casino revenues include VLTs and table games. VLT or video lottery terminal revenues totaled $1.3 billion in fiscal '24. You'll see a breakdown of where those go in Exhibit 5. So after the casino operators, the largest recipient of VLT revenues is the Education Trust Fund, which received $507 million in fiscal 2024. And table games brought in $626 million, with $94 million of that going to the Education Trust Fund, as shown in Exhibit 6. Exhibit 7 shows sports wagering revenues increased in fiscal 2027, and all of the state revenues from sports betting go to the Blueprint Fund. DLS recommendation is to concur with the governor's allowance, and you'll see text of that on page 12. That concludes my presentation, and I can take any questions or expand on anything if you'd like.
Thank you so much for your analysis, Ms. Weibel. Are there any questions for her today? The folks who are here representing the agency will be participating virtually right now, so we are in an empty room together as a subcommittee, but we will be joined by John Martin and I believe Paula Yoakum. Great to see you both. At this time, the floor is yours. I think the audio is being connected for Mr. Martin. Oh, there you are. Mr. Martin, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now,
Okay,
Chairman.
perfect. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Smith and Vice Chair Harris and the members of the Education and Economic Development Subcommittee of the House Appropriations Committee. We welcome the opportunity to appear before you today virtually to present the Maryland Lottery and Gaming Control Agency's fiscal 2026 budget. For the record, my name is John Martin and I am the director of the Maryland Lottery and Gaming Control Agency. With me today is Paula Yoakum, our Chief Financial Officer. At this time, we would like to thank the Department of Legislative Services and particularly Elizabeth Weibel for her excellent work and analysis of our budget. We would also like to thank Shane Benz and the Department of Budget and Management for their assistance in developing the agency's budget. You have our written testimony that goes into greater detail, but let me begin by giving you an overview of our fiscal 2024 results. Our agency contributed nearly $1.6 billion to support the state of Maryland's good causes, including but not limited to the Maryland Education Trust Fund, the Blueprint for Maryland's Future Fund, the state's general fund, which includes public health and safety programs, the state's horse racing industry, the communities and jurisdictions where the state's 6 casinos are located, small, minority, and women-owned business programs, and veterans organizations. Lottery ticket sales contributed nearly $700 million to the state, while casino gaming revenue contributed $824 million, both of which represented slight decreases year over year from fiscal 2023. Meanwhile, sports wagering and fantasy competitions, including daily fantasy sports, combined to contribute over $60 million. The Maryland Lottery program has operated for over 50 years and enjoys broad participation across the state, as 78% of adult Marylanders report playing at least one lottery game in the past 12 months. Since its inception in 1973, traditional lottery sales have exceeded $62.3 billion and have contributed more than $20.1 billion in revenue to the state. The mission of the casino gaming program is to generate revenue for the state of Maryland and to create good-paying jobs while maintaining integrity, security, transparency, and fair play. From the opening of Maryland's first casino in September 2010 through the end of fiscal 2024, slot machine and table game revenues generated by our 6 casinos totaled more than $17.8 billion. Casino gaming contributions to the state through fiscal 2024 totaled more than $7.8 billion. The distribution of casino gaming revenue is directed by statute. The casinos generated nearly $2 billion in gaming revenue from slot machines and table games during fiscal 2024. That's a 4.7% decrease from fiscal 2023. A U.S. Supreme Court decision in 2018 paved the way for states to legalize sports wagering. With voter approval on a referendum in November of 2020, Maryland joined a growing list of states implementing sports wagering at brick and mortar locations in December of 2021 and on mobile platforms in November of 2022. During fiscal 2024, there were 13 retail sportsbook facilities and 12 mobile online sportsbooks operating in Maryland. Each sportsbook contributes 15% of its taxable win to the Blueprint for Maryland's Future Fund, which supports public education programs. In fiscal 2024, these contributions totaled $60.3 million and are on pace to significantly grow in fiscal 2025. Through the first 6 months of the current fiscal year, sports wagering contributions to the Blueprint were $46.6 million, an increase of nearly 90% year over year. The agency continues to significantly expand its organization-wide commitment to emphasizing the importance of responsible play across all lines of business. During fiscal 2024, the agency continued working on a responsible gaming program jointly sponsored by the North American Association of State and Provincial Lotteries, NASPL, which is our industry trade association, and the National Council on Problem Gambling, NCPG. The agency submitted our first application for responsible gaming certification at the sustaining level to NASPL NCPG last month. A group of more than a dozen staff members from multiple departments spent the last 18 months working on the submission, which includes summaries and documentation of the agency's responsible gaming efforts pertaining to employee training, retailer training, public education and awareness, product oversight, research, and advertising. Agency staff continues to collaborate with the University of Maryland's Center of Excellence on Problem Gambling, with regular meetings between the agency and the Center of Excellence staff to coordinate activities and training opportunities. Recently, we have engaged over a dozen other gaming jurisdictions in monthly meetings to share best practices on a variety of critical issues, including addressing challenges with the illegal gaming market. We are seeing progress on many fronts as we collaborate on areas of mutual concern. In conclusion, as it relates to the fiscal 2026 budget, we concur with the DLS recommended action and request your approval of our fiscal 2026 budget as submitted. Thank you for your time. We're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much for the work that you're doing. We do like hearing about revenue, even though we're appropriations. So thank you for the work you're doing. Are there any questions for Mr. Martin or his team? Seeing none, thank you so much for your participation today. There are no other witnesses that have signed up to weigh in on your budget, so that will conclude the budget hearing for your agency today. Thank you, and be safe and stay warm.
Thank you.